it's funny to see the kind of slight differences between the countries and ways of acting and ways of performing text or handling text or writing text. And
anything you can, have you got any examples of that you remember?
I'm so afraid of stereotyping, but well, I guess in a sense that I find that perhaps the European countries or the Central European countries tend to experiment a bit more, especially with form and perhaps also content in a way. In England, there has been this long tradition of the well-made play, which makes them write really well plays, but perhaps a bit more, I don't know, traditional, or I don't know. That's kind of a feeling. I don't know if it's true. And then you have the Nordic countries, which I don't know, is in some kind of way intersection of the both, or I don't know.
What do you think theatre for young audiences should be? What kind of untapped potential does it have? We'll move on to a more philosophical level.
It has this, as all theatre do, it has this unlimited potential for imagination, fantasy and playfulness. So and I think young people are so easily invited into different ways of seeing reality or seeing the world or playing with the world. So I find that a really untapped potential, that you can bring your audience on these huge journeys of imagination and poetics, movement, whatever. I think that's quite untapped, and that's also connected with the production of plays. I'm sometimes afraid of my own plays because there's quite a lot of text in them, and also for children. So, but that does not, as I've said earlier, necessarily mean that I mean that all this text should be spoken or whatever. So, but I think I think sometimes playwrights, when they try to write for young people and children, try to write what they think is the thing that the children want, instead of trying to find a common ground. So they kind of lose themselves into this image of what children's theatre is, instead of writing your version of a children's play, for example.
I think a lot of the time theatre for young audiences, by a lot of people, is seen as a kind of extension of school. It's a form of pedagogy. It's a form of teaching. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if pedagogy, what do you call it? Pedagogy is learning about anything, then I guess that's true. But if it's learning about issues you need to write about in a assignment or a test, then it's wrong. I think it could be, of course it could be, but why should it be a prolonging of that? That would be like saying Hamlet should be about accounting for accountants. It's just silly. Yeah.
So what is different then? What is art if it does not teach, or what does it teach?
Yeah, well, it can teach, but it's not necessarily it's not necessarily about a subject. It could be about exploring how we can relate to each other. And that's a kind of teaching, but it's not the kind of teaching that you learn in school, in a sense. It could be how we experience music or how we feel when we touch each other, and all those things are learning, but it's not the learning we do in school. And I think that's quite important. Have this alternative, or just doing something else. Yeah. So theater should not be like a hidden school or anything like that. It should create alternatives of being in the world, in a sense.
If you were going to mentor a young writer, somebody, or an emerging writer, or just somebody who's moving into writing for young audiences for the first time, but perhaps have written before, what would be your most important advice?
Well, first of all, I would. In the European Writers Lab, we had mentors from different countries, which was amazing, because these mentors were partly dramaturgs and partly other playwrights. And what it turned out was that perhaps especially the playwrights were kind of the ideal dramaturg that I talked about earlier. That is, the dramaturgs that can point out a play's own premises, and then we can talk about the entire fantasy or world in with those premises as a base. So that was just amazing. And what they kind of helped me to do, and which is the same thing I would try to say to someone starting to write theater for children, is that you shouldn't try to write what you think children's theater is, but you should try to find a common ground of fascination, which also fascinates you and fascinates them at the same time, both when it comes to subject, language, fiction, relating to reality.
These mentors that you had, in what way, I mean, what you've mentioned now, that they helped you look for that common ground, was there anything else that they did for you? How did you use them to your advantage in that process?
They were well, partly they are quite good at seeing, because they know the entire writing process. They're quite good at seeing what I haven't been thinking of. So perhaps a comment could be that you thought a lot about the story and the places here, but perhaps there is something about the characters that's a bit off, or I get this feeling. And then you start talking about it, and then you kind of get closer to the issue at hand, and then I don't know, there's just this feeling that you carry on into the writing process onwards. So it's been really useful, really useful. Yeah.
Would you recommend, writers, young writers, emerging writers, to get themselves a mentor? Do you think writers should be braver to kind of just contact somebody with more experience and to get that kind of help?
Yeah, I think this process has convinced me of it, because but you shouldn't pick anyone at random. I think you should try one out and then see if it works. But yeah, definitely they know, they've been through the same things. They're able to see writing in a quite different way than others, and for me it's been a really nice experience.
Are you ever afraid, now that you've written quite a lot for young audiences, are you ever afraid that you've been just branded as by the programmers and the artistic directors and so on and so forth, as somebody who just writes for young audiences? Are you scared of being pigeonholed?
No, if I got that kind of label, then I would be glad. I see that as an honor if you can write good for children and young people. That is, yeah, I would love that. But I would still write for adults though, even though they said that I didn't. But I find that as a huge compliment. So I wouldn't mind that.
Great. Is there anything in your notes that you've prepared that
Is there anything
to ask you about?
Wow,
So I'm looking at my notes
it's
here.
just my thoughts, I guess. I don't know. It's for me the kind of important thing is trying to find the common ground all the way. The common ground, the common association, the kind of. I try to see the process as this kind of a transaction, not a transaction, that's an ugly word, but kind of a shared meeting or a sharing, because I always learn or experience so much when I write for young people, and I hope that they experience something new as well. So for me that is the fascinating thing and the really hard thing as well. It's difficult, but I like it. Yeah, I really do. Yeah.
Excellent.
I guess that's it.
Well, thank you so much for participating in this interview.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.